Another year is in the books. 2025 comes to an end, and even though there were a lot of big game releases, it was hard for me to find 5 games that even resonated enough with me to put them on my Game of the Year list. I already talked about it in a video, I'm not going to rehash it, but for all the big name games that came out this year, you're really not going to find any of them on this list. This list is all indies and clair obscur, to spoil a little bit. But mediocre games are not going to get in the way. You can still be the shiniest turd in the pile, and that's kind of what this Game of the Year list feels like. However, that doesn't mean I didn't have fun playing games. You know me, I like to do the top 5 games from this year and the top 5 games from whenever, since I play so many old games trying to get them off my backlog, and I really enjoyed the games I played from previous years. So it's a pretty contrasting list. I'm excited to talk about it and excited to tell you what my favorite games of the year are. Yakuza 5 really took me by surprise. Coming hot off of Yakuza 4, which was the first game in the series to allow for multiple protagonists, I really didn't like how they implemented it in that game and was very nervous that 5 was going to be more of the same. However, each character's story was fleshed out, making this one of, if not the longest Yakuza game. But it benefits from that because each character actually feels like a character. It feels like they have their own story, but also ties into this overarching grand conspiracy. And for the most part, pays off. Both the new and returning characters are a blast to play as. They feel so different. Outside of the Haruka minigame rhythm game, it felt like the pacing wasn't even that big of an issue. I did nearly all of every character's side stories and missions, but it was because I wanted to. I was engaged with the story and with each of the individual characters and their individual stories. And this became one of, if not my favorite Yakuza that I've played so far. Coming in at number 5 on the 2025 list is The Alters, a really unique sci-fi management base building game. I think they really nailed the overall progression, giving you just enough resources to feel like you're in control, but also just a tight enough deadline that you always feel like you're scrambling, trying to make sure everything is good, and that you can proceed to the next checkpoint in the narrative. The whole concept of the story is making copies of yourself that lived different versions of your life to become good at different things was really fun to explore. And while I don't think they fully stuck the landing, especially at the ending, the journey to get there was memorable and fun. Genuinely, this is one of the few games where I think a sequel would just be perfect. It would allow them to learn from this first game and iterate. I think with just a little bit of tweaking, they were onto something really special with this game. Mass Effect 1 and 2 are 2 of my favorite games of all time. I played them both when they released, and yet it somehow took me until 2025 to finally finish the fight. I went in a little wary, especially since I replayed the first 2 Mass Effects and found Mass Effect 2 much not as good as I remembered it. I absolutely loved it. I feel like it iterated on 2 all the right ways, smoothed out the combat especially, made it engaging, and overall told a really cool story with the Reaper invasion and how you handle it. Yes, I played it now, so I didn't get to experience the misery that was the original game's ending, and I still wasn't too convinced on the new ending that we got, but again, that doesn't sour the entire journey. It was a great end to a great trilogy. I love a good puzzle game. It feels like every year we get a good puzzle game on my end of the year list, and 2025 is no different with the blueprints. Melding roguelite and puzzle games somehow into this amazing package. Exploring the house, learning about the different rooms, the different mechanics, finding all the secrets, and then realizing that once you finish the game and make it to the end, you've actually only just scratched the surface. This is one of those games that, in hindsight, I regret finishing it so quickly. I talked about it in my review, and it was hard for me to do a lot of the end game stuff because it did feel kind of aimless. You aren't really working towards the main goal anymore and are instead working towards solving these different puzzles. And one of the big downsides of that is, because of the random nature of the game, you can't always do that. Not every run can you work on the things you're working on. And unlike other roguelites where you maybe have something like Ascensions in Slay the Spire or the Fear in Hades 2, you don't get anything for beating the blueprints again if you're not solving those puzzles in the meantime. And so I did bounce off the end game a bit. And even still, this is one of the best puzzle games I've ever played. One of the most engaging puzzle games I've ever played. Every run you learn something new, you uncover a new mechanic or secret, and it gets you excited to go try and find where you can apply that in the house. It is a really cool game. It's an absolutely unique game, and it's one that everybody should check out. To this day, I do not think I have played a shooter as innovative as the original Fear. It revolutionized FPSs for me. Unfortunately, the sequels that came out made it a little too arcadey, took it away from the combat of that first game, but luckily we have a spiritual sequel in the form of Trepang 2. This is one of the most brutal, intense shooters that I have ever played. Really does feel like Fear made for the modern day. I don't really know how to describe shooters other than to say it is a lot of fun to shoot people in this game, which, whatever that says. If you like that original Fear game, you have to play Trepang 2. And also, if you just like first-person shooters, you really need to play this game. It is something special. I was never the biggest fan of Hollow Knight. I liked it. It's a fine game. I don't put it on the pedestal that everybody else does. And so I wasn't necessarily waiting for Silksong with the same passion and fervor that everybody else was. It is kind of surreal to play one of those games that takes 10 plus years to come out, or however long it has been. I talked about it in my video. It almost cannot live up to the hype no matter how good it is because it just gets too much of an aura around it. But honestly, I thought Silksong was really, really good. I was really surprised to see the discourse on the game after its release. People talking about it being too hard and too challenging and too punishing. And while I do sort of see where some of the arguments are coming from, at the same time, I personally didn't feel that. I am far from a master at these types of games. I am not one to sit here and tell you to get good or whatever, but I thought Silksong was punishing but fair, and I overall thought it was a very solid game. I did not do a lot of the Act 3 stuff, so maybe that would change my opinion. Maybe that's where a lot of the discussion comes from. But at least the core game, I thought was very well executed. I much preferred the layout of this game's map to the original Hollow Knight. Made it much easier to traverse, and it felt like there's a lot of reduction to some backtracking. I thought the combat was fun and fluid, especially with the different crests, completely changing how Hornet plays and controls. There was a lot of good here, but it wasn't that memorable, especially some of the bosses. There were very few bosses that I look back on and think that was really special. That doesn't mean it's a bad game, but that does mean it falls on number 3 in my list. Another reason why I might have not put Silksong as high up could be number 2 on my whenever list, which is Nine Souls. Nine Souls to me was Silksong before Silksong came out. A game that felt like it took everything Hollow Knight did and said, how can we do that better? Challenging combat, but again, not to the point that you get frustrated or it feels unfair. Visuals, gameplay was smooth, combat was crisp. It all just worked. And if I wasn't such a creature of habit, this might actually have made number 1 on my list. While not as long awaited as Silksong, number 2 on my list for this year goes to another sequel to a massively successful popular game, Hades 2. While I love their other games, Hades 1 never really resonated with me. I played it, I beat Hades a couple times, but it was just never a game that I found myself coming back to. The runs felt too long, too tedious, and with too steep of a difficulty jump. It felt like I could very easily make it to the end of Act 3, and then it felt kind of like a crapshoot how far I would get after that. I just could never get a hang of the combat, the movement. More often than not, I felt like I was unfairly taking damage because I thought I dodged an attack or dashed out of the way, and it just never clicked with me. I get why people like it. I really like how they take the story and make that an integral part of the roguelite gameplay to make it make sense that you're doing these runs over and over again, but it just didn't live up to the other games by the developer. So I didn't have the highest hopes for Hades 2, but I picked it up anyway, because that's what you do, and I'm really glad I did. I think it absolutely smoothed out and improved upon all of the issues I had with Hades 1. All of the weapons in the game feel much more intuitive to use. They all are unique, but they also all feel viable. The game itself feels much better balanced as well, which ironically I do think makes it almost feel easier. Again, I was no expert at Hades 1 and am already clearing both the under and overworld relatively consistently in Hades 2. But just the sheer expansion as well, the fact that there's essentially 2 games here between the over and the underworld, each taking a full run, all the different varieties that you can upgrade on the different weapons. They just took everything and made it more, and for the most part made it better. I do think the story is a little weaker. It feels a little more contrived in this game because you're working to defeat somebody who is undefeatable essentially, and so until you actually do get to that end game part, it does just kind of feel a little pointless. I do think that's part of the themes of the game as well with Chronos and time, but luckily the game doesn't need a story to keep it going. It is one of those just one more run games. I have found myself accidentally playing this game until 2 in the morning multiple times, which is very rare for me. It looks and runs great on the Switch 2. The music is top tier, of course, and it's just the full package of a game. I'm excited to continue to dig into it because it's essentially infinitely replayable. Well, if you're not new to the channel, you know that at some point on this list, we hit the RPG section, and we're there now. My top game of the year is Persona 3 Reload. I am shocked at how much I enjoyed this game. It just felt so refreshing to go back and play Persona 3 after playing Persona 5, Metaphor last year. All these games that are much more complicated, much more in-depth. It just felt so nice to go back to a much more straightforward, classic Persona game. I made a whole video talking about it, so if you want to hear those thoughts, I'd check that out. But Persona 3 Reload takes all of the good that has been iterated on in games that have come since, and yet maintains what that original game was. They didn't add a ton of stuff for you to do. They didn't bloat the game up with more stuff. It's the same game that it was, just with some quality of life and combat improvements. The story is really intriguing, the Midnight Hour, Tartarus, everything that's going on there. It was a nice change of pace to kind of go back, and there's actually been a lot of re-releases of old JRPGs this year, many of which did not make my list, but the Trails in the Sky remake, the Dragon Quest 1 and 2 remake, Octopath Traveler continues to be a game that is essentially a retro RPG, just modern. And going back to those more classic approaches to games, I think has really been refreshing and shows that you don't need a ton of systems or mechanics or whatever. You just need an engaging story and a good game. Something that's made with passion and made with the player in mind, but just to give them a fun, engaging game to play. And that's really what Persona 3 Reload felt like to me. I don't think I have ever experienced a game like I have experienced Clair Obscur Expedition 33. And while in many other Game of the Year videos, that sentence would then be followed by unabashed praise for this game, I'm going to go in a different way, because I played Clair Obscur. I liked it a good bit. I thought it was a solid game, but I didn't love it. I am not as crazy about this game as everybody else is. And honestly, seeing all the discourse on this game, seeing everybody praise this game as if it's some unicorn of a game, it just made me not like it. And that's not fair to the game, because the game itself is still pretty good. A great RPG, great acting, great motion capture. The world itself is very interestingly designed. The combat is fun. I do wish they had backed off a bit on the parry mechanic. It feels too necessary. It feels like it doesn't matter what your build is, because your build just makes the battle faster or slower based on how many times you parry. It's kind of cool that you could, in theory, beat, even at level 1, you could beat the hardest boss in the game by parrying, but then it just makes it feel like not an RPG. So there's a lot there. And man, do I think they really stumbled into the third act with this story. The first act of this game is so impeccably good. The opening is so emotional and visceral. The beginning of the expedition, the end of Act 1, there are just so much good here. And then the more you get into Act 2, it slows down, and then I really didn't like Act 3. I didn't like where the story went. I feel like they way over-focused onto a small section of characters, even though they're trying to make you care about a much larger number of characters and this world as a whole. But really, the game's not about them, and it's not a bad ending, it's a fine ending. It just didn't resonate with me as much as it did for many other people. But oh my gosh, I'm so sick of listening to people talk about this game, and that's such a shame, because this game is good, and it is good to have games like this, and I hope we get more games like this, because at its core, this is a game that was made by people who wanted to make a game. And again, we don't get that enough. We don't get games like this enough. But this game really should have been something like Lost Odyssey back on the Xbox 360. A game that was amazing and solid, and we all love it, but it's just one of many games that came out that year, because this is really just another RPG. It's nothing insane. It's not reinventing the wheel. Most of its story beats are taken from other, arguably better RPGs, but because we're so starved for actual games made by actual people who want to actually just make a game that is fun and engaging to play and isn't some bloated mess, this game gets put on some insane pedestal. It feels like there's no winning with that, because yes, this is my game of the year. It's the game I liked the most this year. But when everybody talks about it to such a level, I feel like I can only be the person saying, like, it's really not that good, guys. And then it makes me think I didn't enjoy it as much as I did. I don't know. This is getting a little reflective, but hopefully that makes sense. It is a great game. If you even think you like RPGs, it's definitely the best entry point, because it was designed to be played by anybody. It's designed to be as appealing to anybody as it can be. But when you like this game, when you play this game and really like it, go play some other RPGs. Go play Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Go play Final Fantasy X. Go play the original Final Fantasy VII. Go play Lost Odyssey. Honestly, go play Blue Dragon. I replayed that on my 360 this year, and that game is way underrated. But still, this is an accomplishment. I'm very happy for Clair Obscur. It came out in the perfect year, because really there's no other game that came out. Every other game that came out from all these big developers, these big series, kind of flopped. There was no big name sequel game that came out that actually lived up to the hype, except maybe Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 and maybe Death Stranding 2. And I'm now repeating myself, but this is why we see the Game Awards. There's only like 3 games getting nominated for pretty much every category. And it's not because there weren't a ton of games that came out this year. A ton of games that arguably, if you said at the beginning of the year and looked at the schedule, you would think these games would have gotten more nominations. But we're just devolving. The medium is devolving, unfortunately. And hopefully, the takeaway from the success that Clair Obscur has is keep letting devs make the games they want to make, and trust that they will resonate with people, and you'll get a much bigger return on your investment versus making these insane, hyper-realistic 500-hour whatevers that nobody actually wants to play, and now you've lost $600 million or whatever. We'll see if that plays out. If it does play out, then Clair Obscur is probably the most meaningful game to come out in the last 15 years, but I don't know. I'm cynical. I'm jaded. I don't think it's going to happen, but maybe it will. And now what do you think? What is your favorite game from 2025? Let me know in the comments down below. Do you think 2025 was a good year for gaming? I sure don't. But leave a comment to tell me why I'm wrong. If you liked the video, please hit the like button, consider subscribing to the channel, maybe even becoming a member. If you guys pay me enough money, just think, I would be able to play more games, because I'd be getting paid to do it. And then I would have played Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, or Death Stranding 2, and who knows, maybe my list would have looked different. But you have only yourselves to blame. This is your fault. If you don't like my list, it's your fault. And I will see you all with the next video.